Hi, welcome back to class. I want to go over with you a rubric that I'll be using to grade our papers for the rest of the semester. This shows the full IBS process from survey to interpretation to evaluation and to application, and lists some of the things that I'm going to be looking for specifically. And in the survey, I want you to note that it's going to be worth 25 points. The interpretation will be worth 50 points, and the evaluation application will be worth 25 points. And I've done that to adjust that for how I've suggested in our other resources how to allot your time. Again, the bulk of your time needs to actually be on the interpretation because that's where the meat of your study is. So spend 1 to 2 hours on the survey, 4 to 6 hours on the interpretation, and 1 to 2 hours on the evaluation and application. Now let's look at some of the pieces that I'm going to look for. Now, first part of the survey is you're going to be delineating your main units and subunits. And what I'm looking for is that you break up units and subunits based on observable date in the text, and that you have a clear separation between main and subunits, and you show both units. And make sure you also add a description of why you made the divisions where you made them, and that's going to be worth up to 5 points. Structure itself, this is the highest amount of credit in the survey. It's going to be 10 out of the 25 points. And again, you're looking for major structures, not minor ones. You're looking for your consistent ability to identify major structures, recognizing interrelationships between structures, so the better work will be able to combine structures that should be together and using the correct labels for the structures. And again, make sure that you give me enough information so that I know what you're seeing. Again, questions in strategic areas. The questions are based on the structure and the content. Again, use the generic questions from the structure worksheet that I gave you and add the content from the passage into those structure questions. Make sure you're asking the definitional what, the rational why or what is the significance, and then the implication, the so what question or implications. That's for each structure, should have at least one question from each of those 3 types. Also, you want to make sure that the strategic areas or key verses that you identify are done on the basis of structure, not just what you think is important. And I'm going to be looking to see that you recognize the overlaps between the structures, and so that some of your strategic areas will be inclusive of different structures. Again, the last 5 points are on your atmosphere, your genre, and your miscellaneous observations. Now, when we get to interpretation, I'm going to be looking for, as you can see, out of the 50 points, 10 are going to be the use of applicable determinants. Okay, and so again, for every assignment, the required determinants are going to be your immediate context, the book context, and the interpretation of others. That will get you 7 points. I'm going to be looking for other determinants: original language insights, word study, historical background, notes on how perhaps a text from an earlier part of the Bible was quoted in this text, or perhaps it's quoted in another part of the Bible. So those are some of the determinants. Again, you can look at that worksheet, suggestions for improving your work, to see other types of data and observations that you can bring in. I'm then going to be looking for your ability to work inductively by making observations, and that your conclusions are based on inferential reasoning, moving from observation to inference, and that the inferences themselves actually flow from what you've observed, and that you're moving beyond just obvious types of things and drawing out some of the fuller implications. The bulk of the survey is going to be on the depths of your observations and inferences. Again, you can, if you want to know what you should be doing on your assignments, dig deeper into the text. So read the text closely. Make sure that you work with major terms. Observe translational ambiguities and talk about what the differences are. Read read into the structures, try to flesh the structures out in your observation inference work. Notice the order and relationship within the data, that it's make it explicit. Make sure your observations are actually dealing with major interpretive issues. If you have recourse to original language, make some original language insights, bring in historical geographical background, broader book context. Again, dig deeply. Don't just make one pass through the text, make multiple passes and make as many observations and inferences as you can off the data that you have. Then there's going to be dialogue with commentary, with secondary resources. For this class, it's required that you use at least two modern commentaries or two modern refereed articles that you get from Asbury Scholar or some other database. Again, if you use two, that's going to be worth 4 points. If you use the wrong types of commentaries, like if I see Matthew Henry as your one pick, that may actually be a negative value for this. So make sure you're using modern critical commentaries. You're going to get 0 points or negative points actually for this part. And then I'm also looking that you're working on the big picture versus just being fragmentary, that you're digging deeply into something that comes out of your strategic area. Okay, evaluation application. Again, for all these things, watch the videos on method because we're just talking about how the grading is. But you want to discuss, first of all, again, the psalm, psalter context. Again, you start with the truth that comes out of your interpretive synthesis. You're looking for the original application in the original text. You're assessing the book's own view of its purpose and application. So, what's the original application? How did that fit into the broader book that we're working in? And also, we're going to assess the truth against the context of the book as a whole. So you want to think again, how does the truth that comes out of the text that I'm studying, how is that dealt with in the rest of the book, if it is? Then move to a discussion of the Old Testament and New Testament context. So I'm going to be looking for your choice of texts, and also, again, rule of thumb, a couple of passages from the Old Testament outside of the book that you're working in, a couple of passages from the New Testament. I'm going to look at the evaluative summary in terms of how have you assessed the trajectory of the canonical conversation, and you want to restate the truth in light of your evaluative process. In other words, how would you rewrite the truth that you began with at the beginning of the evaluation in light of what the rest of the Scripture says, and especially since if you're working with the Old Testament text, which you are this semester, you want to work on how does the New Testament, how does our truth shift, is nuanced in light of the fullest revelation in the New Testament. And then the last piece, 10 points for this, are contemporary context-specific application. So are you applying the truth from your evaluative summary? Are you applying the truth beyond just existential, your own personal concerns to encompass a wider ecclesial and societal issue? So are you appropriating this text into multiple different ways? And then are you doing it specifically in a context versus just being generic? And are you exploring and experimenting with the GPS map to help drive those down and refine the way you might do the application? So again, this gives you a possibility of 100 points. I'll be using this rubric to grade the rest of our work for the class. If you have any questions, you can let me know. And I look forward to continuing to receive your excellent work this term. Thanks.